Hey guys, welcome to Mindset You. Today's episode, we're going to look at death and life and what they teach us about ourselves and about love and those around us. So enjoy and let us know what your thoughts are on this subject.
I just want to start off by saying congratulations on this new adventure with the family.
Thank you.
It's exciting. I know you have a lot on your plate. How does it feel?
So what Jay's talking about is we just closed on our house. And it's interesting because usually these projects are exciting for me in the sense of projects like this, I mean, is things that I have to like work on design and stuff like that. And there is that excitement for it, but there's also like this overwhelm of everything we have going on. And very little limited time that we have. And then the idea of, purchasing this property and having to basically do a entire renovation, reconstruction. There's a lot of daunting points to it, plus paying rent and mortgage on top of that is, yeah. So there's a lot of excitement, but then there's also like this like overwhelm of like how we're going to manage it. So that's where that is. But, like the day that we finally got the closing was exciting until, we're scheduling our day. We got the closing at noon. And then we got a call from my sister that she's taking my father to the hospital. And that kind of changed the mood.
Yeah.
So my dad has never done a great job of taking care of his health. And so he's been sick for weeks, not taking care of himself, still going to work, still like trying to battle it out. It's on his head, according to him. And he woke up where his legs were swollen. He can't breathe. He like not fully there because he's not getting enough oxygen. And he's still fighting about, I don't need to go to the hospital. So my sister kind of threw him in the car and made him go. Well, actually, they went to urgent care. And urgent care saw him, took one look at him, and were like, he needs to go to the hospital right now. This is possibly heart failure. So
that's not terrifying at all.
So there's that going on. So it's been, like I was saying, a very eventful week. Just trying to manage it all and keep the head up on everything that's going on.
So I guess when there's situations like this where, you got 18 million things coming at you all at once, what are some of the ways that you use to kind of navigate that?
So this is where, like, for me, I go into the space of, all right, so I'll give you kind of background on with the house.
Yeah.
So we were supposed to close on the house a week before. And it was part of the contract that we had to close by that date because the seller was purchasing a different property where she had a timeline. So she needed to close by last week, Thursday, in order to be able to move on with her. And we made that clear to the lenders and everything. And then as the time was catching up, it's like, hey, we have everything. We're sending all the information. We're on top of it. And they were very passive. They were not answering. They'll send an email in the morning. They would answer till they're about to leave the office. Oh, you guys still need to submit this. Or we need a new copy of this. And just like time passing. And so Paola she's the one that's been handling this because I've been traveling for work. So she was super stressed. And that this is where like I usually do pretty well with these situations because of how I boil things down. I'm like, all right, what's my intent and what are the options? So, talking to Paola is that it's like, all right, our intent is number one to stay true to our word with the seller. And now what are our options? So with those two things in alignment, like our intent and our options, and we're really exercising all of them, this is outside of our control. We need to recognize that it's outside of our control. It's about letting go and just continue to put pressure, but not carry that frustration
there's but so much you can do if you're doing everything on your end.
Mm-hmm.
I think that's also frustrating in itself, where it's like, I'm doing my part, please fucking do your part. That's what you're being paid for.
Absolutely. And it's frustrating because you feel powerless,
Yeah.
But like, the whole everything's make believe type of thing is like, these people believe in their stories and their make believe rules. Mm-hmm. And they're like, well, no, this have to go this way. And so to me, it's more so to that aspect of it is more about surrendering.
Yeah.
Like surrender to what is and control what you can. That part becomes the empowering part of like recognizing that you are controlling what you can. With then on the flip side to that is like my dad thing, where it was kind of a revelation for me in terms of with my dad specifically, we've grown a lot closer as I became an adult, and like we started to recognize how we see the world very similarly. Like I'm quite certain my dad is dyslexic, and
he's not just Dominican.
And that's where I get it from. But like recently we were talking about the understanding of dyslexia, and it's like number one is like my dad works in refrigeration. He's built multiple companies in refrigeration space of installations, resale, all this stuff, custom duct work, all this stuff. So my dad has always been very frustrated with other people because they don't understand what he explains and how he sees things. And he's like, they're stupid. My dad has like a 3rd grade education, but he's been a businessman.
I like that. I like that mentality. It's like, I have a 3rd grade education. I think you're dumb. Think about that.
My dad opened his first business in Dominican Republic, which, by the way, he left to
in 4th grade.
He was 13 years old when he opened it.
Of course. I was close. I wasn't far off.
No, you weren't. It's still there. The business is still there. It's still operational, still doing what he set it up to do.
That's awesome.
He's no longer the owner. He had left it to his brother, and then his brother sold it. But the business itself, it's still there.
That's awesome.
So like super entrepreneur. The way he sees things and visualizing. So I was explaining to him that difference of like, we see the world in a different way. Other people don't understand that. So you get frustrated when interacting with other people because you don't understand that they're coming from a different perspective, right? So that can be frustrating because you can see the answer right in front of you. And like you're describing it here, and they're just going right over them, over their heads. So him understanding that was like a big, it's like, really? Like, they don't understand this? Like, it's like, oh, that's like such a burden for him. Has been such a frustration for him with like people that it was really, really insightful for him to kind of see it from that perspective. So all that to say, like we've really started to get to know each other after I became an adult and so on and so forth. We used to clash a lot. And now we get along fairly well. So, when I got the call about him going to the hospital and everything, to me, I tend to think of like worst case scenario.
I'm the same way, especially when it comes to my parents. It's
And for me, it's not like it's not like, oh, I'm a pessimist or anything like that. I tend to always think that way. Like I'm prepared for the best. Expect the best, but prepare for the worst type of
Yeah.
thing. So like in that preparation, I'm like, so what if, he goes, this is the last time, I get to speak to him or whatever. And that made me realize I was like, damn, I want to spend a lot more time with my dad,
Yeah.
with him specifically, because there's so much that we've started to learn about each other. And there's so much more that I'm so curious about,
Yeah.
and I want to kind of share with him too. So that kind of gave me that realization, and it's great that he's recovering, he's getting better, because it allows me to then be able to exercise that.
Yeah.
And then the fact that he's been reaching out a lot. He calls me, and the way that, for those of you who are not in our community, Dominicans, Hispanics overall, is like the way they share their love is by shaming you. My dad, like Jay's dad, has always said stuff like, in Spanish, tú es que tú sirves para algo. You see, you're worth something. Tú es que tú no eres bruto nada. You see, you're not that dumb. This is how compliments come in. And then on the flip side, when he calls me because he misses me and he wants to see me, he's like, I could be dead and you wouldn't care. Like all this like shame.
They give you like the guilt trip. It's so funny.
And I just roll my eyes, right? And my dad's been calling like twice a week, like with these things, and it's just frustrating because it forces you to like push away more, because you're like, so realizing this is like, I gotta plan more with my dad, bring him over. He just bought the kids like a week ago. He just bought the kids electric scooters. Like he called me. He's like, I'm in Costco right now. They got these cool electric scooters. I want to buy them for kids. Or is that okay? I was like, sure.
At least he asked. Some people don't even ask, and they just get these exuberant gifts. And you're like, what am I going to do with this now? Thank you.
Well, it's a good thing that he did, because he was about to buy an adult version of it that went like 25 miles per hour.
Oh, that would have been awesome.
No, they have a kids one that only goes 10 miles per hour. Let's go with that one, Dad.
Yeah.
So
no, I get the whole being close to parents, especially the dad. Similar situation where my dad got not sick, but he had heart issues in 2009, and I was always close to my dad. But they were like, hey, see you later. I love you. Bye. And then when he was in the hospital for like 6 months, that it changed my complete perspective on my parents and my dad in particular, where it made me really appreciate him. And it's also, I think, the reason now why I'm so close with him. And I think that we are even more alike, aside from just the fact that, I'm a clone of him. It's also like one of the reasons why I always take into account when me and Ash talk about like moving away. Like if you're like, let's, we look at like places like in Florida or like Arizona and other, just buying a house somewhere else where it's warm. In the back of our minds, it was always like, are we cool with being away from family? That's like so far away, because phone calls are nice, but being able to like see your parents, especially as they get older, I think it's kind of important. Depending on the relationship. I don't know if you can hear my cat right now. She's being a fucking bitch.
No, I don't hear.
Oh, you can hear. Okay, cool. No, guys, never mind then. It makes you appreciate. It sucks that like these scary times make you start appreciating stuff. Like, oh, he's been calling me all the time. And you're like, I need to pick up the phone. I need to. You start scheduling all these different things that you want to do, and how you want them to be in your life as much as possible, because you do know that there will be a time that they're not there, and you don't realize how big of a hole that's going to leave. So I always recommend it to everybody. If you have a good relationship with your family, or if you have a semi good relationship with your family, I always recommend trying to work it out. I I get that it's different for other people, but they all have stories. They're all human, and the older you get, the more you learn. The more you learn about these little secrets that they've had, that they've hid from everybody, and all the just like the ways that they grew up and stuff, and you start to understand them a lot more. And if you're able to, I highly recommend talking to your parents and asking them about their lives, like before we were around,
Mhm.
because you'll realize that you guys are a lot more similar than you thought. And that life just happens, and they have to make decisions the same way that we have to make decisions. So I think it humanizes them a little bit more. They're not
Mhm.
that you don't put them on that pedestal that we tend to do with our parents, where it's like you're supposed to do no wrong, you're supposed to be all knowing, you're supposed to know all the answers.
Mhm.
You know, you give them that God complex almost sometimes.
Yeah.
And it really humanizes them, and it makes them. I feel like it always made me closer, knowing how flawed my parents were. Like I also found out my mom's gonna kill me for this. So me and Ash went over the other day, and we were talking to my parents about around the time I was born. I'm a September baby, which means I was conceived around like late December, early January. And my mom brought up having I think it was like a New Year's party, and
Mhm.
she was like she didn't know that she was pregnant with me yet. They were trying but had no luck, so they kind of like just stopped. They stopped thinking about it. And my mom was like, "Yeah, was that the holiday party that they spiked the punch with LSD?" And Ash was like, "I think you like he was inside of you." I was incubating in there, and then like when she said that, that makes so much more sense about my personality. That there was a little hint of LSD just thrown into the mix. She was like, "You were just a you like you were just a little egg. It was fine." And I was like, you know, that's still a thing, right? So you find out stories like that. Parents are fun.
Yeah. Years ago, we were on a flight with my dad. It was me and Paola, my wife, and my dad. We were on a flight to California. So it was a long flight. And this is like the first time where I'll give you this. My dad is dyslexic for sure, and very likely very ADHD. He'll be talking to you mid conversation. If he's not interested, just walks away. And
I
it's
love
not like,
that.
oh, I'm done. No, just walks away like you're mid sentence and you're like, wait. Or if you're on the phone with him, he was like, oh, hey, how are you? And then he'll just start talking to someone else. And then they're, oh, you're there. Hi, what's up? Like, it's hard body. This is my son. So this was the first time like where my dad is me, Paola, and my dad sitting on a row. So nowhere to go. We're just talking for like a 6-hour flight.
Yeah.
Talk the whole entire time, just learning about him, learning about like, experiences and stuff and his ideas and all this stuff. And it was like, oh wow, like you're a person. This is like back in shortly after wait, I know. Yeah, because my nephew, we were going for my nephew's first second birthday, and my other nephew was 6 months old. So that nephew right now that was 6 months old at that time is now 18 years old. So there's a time frame of that.
Yeah. It's weird finding out that your parents are human.
Yeah.
Such a weird thing.
Yeah. With my mom, it was younger. I was younger than that when my mom pulled me into her room and she's like, I have to tell you something. It's like, what? Like, I've been thinking about this for a long time and I have to tell you this. And she's like, I'm actually a lot older than what you guys know me to be. I'm like, you never told me your age, so I don't know what that is. She's like,
Nothing
well,
to base this on, lady.
she's like, well, I'm 10 years older than what everyone thinks I am. So like she's 10 years older than what my dad believed she was.
Even your dad didn't know?
Yeah.
Whoa. That's awesome.
So that was like a what the hell? I was in high school during that when she told me that.
I like that you were in high school.
So it was like a lot of stuff like that. And then when I was in college, I found out that I have a brother in DR. It's like 6 months older than me. So yeah, and I found out because he like messaged me on MySpace or something like that, and so there was like a bunch of stuff like that that I found out.
Oh, Latin parents
Yeah,
and the secrets they hold.
but yeah, I agree with you on that. Like for me, after high school is when I started to get to know my parents as people, because I would be so frustrated with them. I would blow up. Like when my mom and I, we couldn't get along. We couldn't be in a room for 5 minutes without it being an explosion. And my dad used to frustrate me because he used to be so um my dad wouldn't share with you like what he is. He would just like, oh, okay, sure, I'll agree with you, and go do the complete opposite. Right. So just to give you context, my siblings, my brother and my sister, like operate his business now. And if they make a plan of how it's going to be executed, my dad is like, sure. Goes out the door, does the complete opposite, like destroys the whole plan. It's like, oh, no, I saw this opportunity, so I jumped into this. It's like, well, you can't do that anymore. It's not just you, man. So, yeah. So, like, that used to frustrate me so much about my dad, but like learning how he thinks and that frustration of like how other people don't see the opportunities the way he sees them, and and how my dad has always felt like almost boxed in,
Yeah,
by like circumstances and stuff. Like that's me, that's oh, I didn't have the like, I learned about the dyslexia and all that stuff in older age.
yeah,
So I didn't know that I was like, I was made to feel like I wasn't, worthy or intelligent at a young age. And then learning that about myself made me realize, oh, is that they don't understand me. But I always had this internal confidence of like, yeah, I'm stupid with your school stuff, but these things I understand in a deeper level.
mm-hmm.
And having that connection with my dad is like, that's exactly what so going back to that thing of like, people are idiots, that's that connection that we've created. Like, it's like, oh, okay. And we can sit there and discuss like these abstract ideas and things that he wants to do and create. He's like, I want to create this machine, and he'll draw a little thing, and I know how to draw, so I'll be able to really sketch it for him. And we brainstorm. How about you do this? How about you do that? Whatever. And have a blast doing that. So like connecting with him in that level has been huge. So again, I agree with you, but this has made me realize like I want to do more of that. I want to cut time out to actually do that, and also to have my kids know their grandpa in that way. Not just like saying say hi to grandpa and then run off to your room. Like, no, get your asses over here.
No, spend time. It's valuable. I don't think people realize how much we learn from from our grandparents, who are lucky enough to know their grandparents. Because I know a lot of people who, never really had the ability to, to know their grandparents. I was fortunate that I was close with the grandparents on my mom's side. I'm cool with the grandparents on my dad's side, but they live. My grandma passed away a few years ago, but my grandpa lives in Puerto Rico. So like I'd see him, and I see him, we talk about baseball because that was our common ground. He'd just make fun of me for liking the Yankees, and he's a Mets fan, and but the older I get, the more stories you learn, and and I always had a skewed view on my dad's side, on my grandparents from my dad's side, because they were really hard on my dad. My dad was like 1 to 9, the black sheep, the little rebel, and he took a lot of beatings, and he got the not so much the fair end of the stick, or however the saying goes. And I think I knew that from a young age because my mom would tell me, stories like, like you should really appreciate how much like your dad loves you, and like how like your dad never wanted to hit you because he was beat so much as a kid.
Mm-hmm.
So I always like held that against my grandparents. But then like the older you get, the more you learn, like, it was a different way of life. I don't think that you should, beat on your kids, but it's old school. They handle shit differently, and you learn about the trials and tribulations that they went through coming from Puerto Rico to here and all that shit. And not that it gives them any slack, but at the same time, it makes me understand them just a little bit more and why they acted the way that they did. And I always credit my dad because he always loved them. He always showed them so much love. He still shows them so much love. It's a crazy thing. It's understanding family and understanding the older people in your families, because they're all human and they all have stories, and it's fucking wild.
Yeah.
And you don't have to like them. You don't have to like them, but you should know them.
Yeah. Yeah.
Know why you don't like them.
Hey guys, if you're enjoying this podcast, please subscribe, like below, comment, let us know your thoughts, and continue to enjoy.
The only grandparent that, was alive when I was younger was my grandfather from my father's side. And to give context, my father is one of 20 plus.
Damn.
And my grandfather.
Wait, I'm sorry. Not from all the same lady, right?
No, I don't think
I was
so.
like, that's impressive to fucking throw out 20 kids.
No.
Wow.
So there were certain kids, like from the grandkids, that knew him, and my brother was one of them. So I'm the only one from both my parents. My father had my brother before he met my mother, and my mother had my other brother and sister before she met my father.
Okay.
So I'm the only one from both of them. My brother from my father's side, when my father came here, he was like basically like a street kid, and he lived with my grandfather. And so there were a group of cousins that lived under my grandfather. And the only thing I heard about him is the way he used to beat the shit out of all of them.
Yeah.
And so my only like context with him is like once a year I would get a call from him where he would call all his grandkids, and you hear someone telling him, this one is Rances, Abraham's son, and he's like, oh, hi, Rances. Oh, it's your grandfather. And like, it's like, hi. It's like, but then in retrospect, that's like really cool. He would take time out to do that.
Yeah.
Yeah. But as a kid, you're like, this guy doesn't even know who I am. Like, why? So that like that was the only thing. And then like when I was, I don't know if I was maybe I was in middle school was when he died. I don't remember. I'm not sure. But I wasn't close with him in any way. The rest of my grandparents I wasn't close with. So I never had that understanding of that, like grandparents and that relationship. No, because first of all, from my mom's side, I think they were both passed away by the time I was born.
Yeah.
From my father's side, my grandmother died when I was like 4 or 2 or something like that. So I never had that, So for me is also the context of that with my kids is like, you have that, like you have this and you have it from both sides,
Don't take it for granted.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I want them to be able to enjoy that because they're close by. They they have the opportunity to see them all the time.
Yeah.
And they've spent a lot of time with them, but they don't like
know them.
you know. And then the language barrier, like my kids speak Spanish, but their Spanish has been dying down more and more over the years. Because in school they don't practice it and so forth. So like my daughter the other day, I heard her trying to speak to her grandfather, and she's like sounds like a gringo.
Sounds like me.
Yeah. And having a lot of trouble like being able to, and she just like whatever, and skips away because she can't communicate. And I'm like, oh, that's so sad. Like that barrier, you know.
Yeah.
So I'm like, nope, you gonna speak Spanish. No, we're gonna speak Spanish every time we have dinner. No exceptions.
No, that's sweet though, man. I think it sucks that it's like scary situations like this that puts these things in perspective. But you know, like everything, there's always a silver lining in every situation that there is, whether it's good or bad. And I think it's it's important that we realize that. You know,
I agree.
This time is borrowed, and it's it's against us. If there's one thing that is, time is always against us. It's never really on our side.
Yeah.
So we got to make the most of it while we're here. And
for me, the realization also comes along with, my best friend who lost his father last month, I think it was. So it's like,
it's a lot.
And, his father was much younger than my father.
Yeah.
And it's like, dang, like not expected at all type of situation. Earlier this year, my aunt died, from cancer, and it's like she was the healthiest of all my mom's sisters. Like, till she was going through cancer and all chemo and everything, and she's still working out every day. Like, I have footage of her the last few days of her life. She's still like going to the park and doing all these exercises and stuff like that. Yeah. Until she like just couldn't anymore. So she's just FYI for the audience. She's the one that got me into fitness. When I was like 5 years old, she'll take me she'll take me running and take me to the George Washington Bridge, and we'll run the bridge back and forth. And always take me to like these health fairs and all this stuff.
That's so cool. Yeah, no, it's rough. It makes you start reflecting, right? It makes you start thinking about, and then it's also, how we handle those losses too, because like you don't know how you're going to take it until it finally happens, and seeing friends who lose their parents, it changes their life, no matter how close they were, or no matter if they were super close with their parents or if they weren't close with their parents. It changes everybody. And I think it really makes you reflect. It really makes you, on the what ifs and all that. And
that
it's rough.
Yeah, that our very close friend passed away. It's been 8 years ago. Right, Arlene.
Yeah,
she was 29. She died, and that was a massive shock, right? Because at that age, you're like, we're not supposed to be. It's not supposed to happen,
Yeah.
And that was like, that was a break of the heart in every level, because she was someone that we envisioned that would always be part of our lives. She was, to our kids, she was the fun aunt type of thing. And that was I want to say, like, the closest connection to death that I've had.
Yeah.
Because it was someone who literally spent every day with us.
Yeah.
And that made me look at and examine my perception of death. which it took a while. Like I went through a very rough period in my life, going like processing that. But it also gave me a lot of understanding of how we interact and the time that we spend together. And that, like, she really shifted the way that I viewed the people I cared for.
Yeah.
Now at this stage is almost expanding that to my parents as well, because my parents weren't part of that equation. It's like the people I spend time with is like my friends, my cousins, my siblings. My parents were kind of like, all right, they're the background type of thing.
Yeah, it's kind of like they're always going to be there. It's the same thing with our friends when we're young. It's like they're always going to be here, you know.
Yeah. So now it's like applying that same logic to the parents and that lineage, because it's really who you are comes from your parents, right? There's so much that is passed down through that you think is so you, and you're independently yourself and all this stuff, and then you realize, you look at your parents and you're like, oh shit, I'm looking in the mirror. I haven't been able to see that reality for so long because of the ego that you construct to separate yourself. But then you realize it's like, that's why we clash so much, because we're the same person. So I think it's like death is beautiful in that sense of teaching us, you know, and acknowledging how close death is in every moment can teach us so much.
Yeah. It's like a bittersweet teacher. I don't know. There's probably a better explanation for it, but it's just one of those. It's you never want you never want to really experience it, but you always learn from it, whether good or bad. And grief is a thing. Grief is the state. You know, like they always say, like the stages of grief and stuff. And when finally I did the ant stuff.
You've been good though.
I know. I was waiting to play. All right, we're gonna wrap this up before I say it. I ruined it. But you, before talking about like dealing with Arlene's passing and like how it was hard, you know, there's certain stages that it was really hard, and it's rough to wrap your mind around it. And even though like you learn from it, it's always a new experience when it comes to somebody new. It always pulls at a different, you know. I don't know if I'm explaining it correctly. If that making it, I feel like I'm starting to sound like you. If you're on a boat and you're going in one direction, right? We'll say that death is a gust of wind and it just blows you in a complete different direction. It takes you a while to figure out where you are.
That was fucking beautiful.
Right? Fuck yeah. The fact that you're like, yeah, I get it. It takes you a while to figure out where you're going again. But I think that's also the beauty of it, that you eventually do figure out, you know, you find your footing, you find your North Star, whatever the fuck it is. And it gives you a new sense of life, and it gives you a new, it adds to that gratitude. It makes you grateful for everyone who's still here, and it makes you grateful for the people that you left, because you realize how much you learned from them, how much they meant to you, how much you're alike, you know. It's a wonderful thing. It's a fucked up wonderful thing. And my condolences to anybody who's dealing with that right now. It's not fun. I'll leave it one last thing. One of my good friends, she recently just lost her dog. And I know how some people are like, oh, it's a dog, it's fine, but like this dog was like her kid. I'm in the sense I treat my dogs like my kids too. And she's taking it really, 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 really hard. 8-year-old little Chihuahua, wonderful little guy, Tito. You know, go away for a weekend, come back, he's super sick. Gone. Just like that. And then where do you go from there? She's in that phase where she's blaming herself. Why did I go away? Why did I go away for Thanksgiving with my partner to go meet their family? Why did I do this? Why did I bring her? Why did I bring the dog to the vet? You know how I feel about the vet. All these other things. I was like, just be happy that you got to spend time with the little guy. It's easier said than done, because the minute I lose one of these little fuckers, I'm gonna lose it. It's gonna be rough. It's rough. They teach you a sense of love that a human never able to teach me, and I'm so thankful that I got to learn that before I met my wife. Indy helped. Indy helped me understand things, patience, not to get mad at Ashley when she shits on the rug. All these things. I didn't make one joke this entire podcast. I had to make one.
Had to. I would have backed you up.
Yeah, I would have been backed up. I would have spent the whole day being like, I didn't say one funny thing. Just my best thing is just appreciate what you got, appreciate what you had, and just be thankful that you got to experience it when you did.
And be present in the present.
Yeah, and be present, and just be happy that you're here, because tomorrow you might not be.
Yep.
Just the way it is. Anything else you want to wrap up before
I think that was
we
beautiful.
close out this wonderful podcast? I'm just going to do the ending right here. Guys, this was reflective, somewhat somber Mindset U episode. I think it's well needed. Otherwise, you'll let me just talk about shitting my pants all the time. Don't forget to like, subscribe, and find us anywhere that you listen to your podcast, whether it's YouTube, Google Podcasts. No, it's not Google Podcasts anymore. It's YouTube Music.
Apple Podcasts. We got
Apple Podcasts, Spotify.
YouTube Music, Spotify.
YouTube Music. YouTube.
Stitcher, and all the other ones that you can imagine. We're there.
Yeah. And don't forget to go to VidaProject.com. Eventually, you guys will have that. What is it? So it's not a it's not a manifesto. It's,
so
what do you call it?
We're working on it. We actually had a meeting this morning. It's a journal. It's a mindset journal to overcome challenges, change, and look at your life with a perspective to learn from, to grow from, and really shift your vision and be able to accomplish things. So it's really about taking everything that we've learned in coaching people through all types of challenges and changes in their lives, and we're putting it into a self-reflection journal workbook that you can use to really feel empowered and take control of your whole life.
Sweet. And that's another episode of Mindset U.
Peace.